Today, it's Edwin's Monday evening property rant. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Welcome to those posts covering finance and property news Monday evening. And Edwin, with friend, is with me. Hi Edwin, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Martin. I'm doing well. This is Evan wanted to say hello since I'm invading their privacy, Dusty and Evan's privacy. So she just wanted to say hello to the audience.
Great. Well, it's a good time of year to have a fluffy overcoat, right?
Yeah, if I could only put her around my neck when I go out.
Well, it would be quite useful if you could do that. I mean, you know, the fact is that animals seem to have a built-in thermostat. You know, I've noticed that my two dogs, when it gets cold, they sort of huddle up and manage to keep warm. Yeah, I'm afraid that my overcoat is getting rather thin these days.
Well, that's what dinners are for, I guess. We might anyway. We could go on and on talking about the joys of having small friends around. But there's not much joy out there, Martin. Viva la revolución is the old saying. From South America all the way to Europe now, hey?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, isn't it, that, light is slowly dawning. You know, the Tom Panis quote you've got there, a mass exodus of agents leaving the industry, the harsh reality behind record-breaking property prices. I mean, it's all coming home to roost a bit, isn't it?
Look, it is, and I'm waiting to see when the revolution is going to start here in Australia, the rental revolution. But I guess look, the exodus has commenced. We said, and we've been saying that from as far back as 2019, we've been telling our audience that the sales numbers were very low, but for the pandemic of 2020, the real estate industry was saved, and many agents in the industry stayed because of JobKeeper. I was pretty much saying that a lot of offices were going to close towards the end of 2019, and with many other industries, but for the pandemic, things got many stayed employed and many businesses stayed open. But now we've come into the harsh reality. I don't believe there's going to be another rescue strategy for the real estate industry. Tom saying that many are leaving because he has a huge following and a network within the real estate industry. He knows he's in with the powers to be, and he knows what's happening. And we said at the beginning of towards the end of quarter 2022 that if listing numbers continue to remain low, which they have for the first half of this year, that the industry will be in a lot of pain, and it'll be deja vu 2019. It's just a reset of where we were in 2019. But this is it. There is no lifesaver. There is no mattress to cushion the blow for the real estate industry itself.
That's right, and of course the RBA will probably lift rates once again on Tuesday. No guarantee, but quite expectations that they have. And I published my latest stress results. Rental stress continuing to rise, mortgage stress continuing to rise, more people finding it harder. And of course the big message now is that this is going to go on for a lot longer, right? Higher rates for longer. And higher rates for longer has to translate into low momentum in the housing sector, price falls in the housing sector, and more estate agencies effectively falling over because, like it or not, if they can't make the transaction throughput, they can't survive, really, can they?
No, and this is the conundrum, call it a conundrum, or call it the quagmire that we are in. There's not a lot of construction happening. Construction costs are very high. A lot of developers that I know that personally and by other means, it's that they don't want to build. Cost of building is too high. They don't see at the moment. They don't see a return on investment. A lot of the actual trades are being absorbed by the government infrastructure that is happening all over all over Sydney at the moment. I mean, there are two major projects happening in Liverpool. We lost some tradespeople to that. There's something happening in Gosford. We lost painters, two painting crews to that project there. And if you want to build anything small, well, the trade groups are preferencing longevity of a contract as opposed to one-offs here and there. So construction costs aren't going to get any cheaper soon, albeit with the mass immigration and the government's dream of getting these people to join the building industry is we're still years away from a fix. So you've got all these things. It's a quagmire of many different things happening. As you said, the interest rate rises, the pressure that's building up on affordability. As Tom puts out, there's a lot of discussion around the investors selling off, which you and I have been speaking about, which would be one of the main areas of the housing sector that will fold, because particularly in your traditional rental markets where you don't have the appetite for that budget accommodation, they've relabeled the illegal accommodation that happens to budget accommodation to make it more palatable, and in areas where you've got investors that are also being looked after by your traditional property managers as opposed to self-managed. So there's a lot going to be playing out, but unfortunately, Martin, I really don't see any relief for those that are wanting to get into the property arena in terms of having that security by having a principal place of residence that they own, albeit owned jointly with the bank, but at least have some sort of longevity of insecurity. I really can't see much happening unless we see a translation of all these events translating into as I'm saying, as I'm calling it, unless we see double the amount of numbers on market for sale, with the amount of appetite that's out there, I don't know. It's going to be a slow, painful walk for the next 3, possibly 6 months if things don't change.
Yeah, and I will make the point, firstly, CoreLogic's numbers came out and have showed slight increase again in property prices, other than in Tasmania. But, of course, that's an aggregate number on very low numbers and on certain lagged assumptions. So we believe that there's probably maybe a 6-week, 8-week delay between reality and what's happening. So that's still reflecting the earlier boost of confidence when people weren't expecting rates higher. I think the other point there, Edwin, I'm seeing it in my surveys, is that more property investors are underwater from a cash flow perspective because they are still mortgaged and those mortgages are going up. And whilst they've been able to put the rents up somewhat, they haven't been able to put the rents up sufficiently to be able to cover all of the extra costs. So my expectation is that we will see some additional listings of rather second quality investment properties, but those investment properties aren't probably attractive to some mainstream buyers, although, as we'll discuss in a moment, some WeChat chatterers might be quite interested because of the population strategy of turning a house into individual rooms and letting out in each individual room, as we'll come on to. But there's a bunch of stuff going on here, and it's hard to see any really light at the end of the tunnel at the moment, though I'm still fascinated by the number of people on social media who still come back and say, oh, our property prices never go down, we're seeing lots of booms, etc., etc. So I don't know where the hopium is, but to my mind, the hopium supplies are getting a bit limited just now.
Yeah, and look, and whilst the supply is limited, there's going to be a demand. There is a greater demand. And due to the immigration policies that are currently playing out, and that's a given. And particularly in a lot of areas of Sydney, look, admittely, early on in the year, I was hopeful that the numbers would change for have more choice, but we haven't had that choice, and a lot of that. In my opinion, is because The biggest question that a lot of the people have at the moment that are either downsizing, and or feeling the mortgage stress is where do they go? Where do they go? And a lot of the downsizers, with a lot of the agencies that we talk to, is a lot of the downsizers don't really want to go further afield than where they've spent the last 30, 40 years of their life, mate. And that's a sheer fact and reality. So they're bunkering down, and it's going to be the decisions that need to be made. Now, whilst there's those transition costs, and because of those transition costs are very high in terms of your stamp duties and in the price points that they're purchasing, they've got hard decisions to make to see whether or not they can fund the retirement as well. You've got the others that are on that want to upgrade or buy something bigger, but again, there's a transaction cost involved with that, and further to that, you've got the situation, whether they can't afford what they have and they want to go down, down a step or go up a step. You're going from potentially a fixed mortgage rate of 2.75 to 6.5. So they're going to wait. They're going to wait it out because again, it's pardon me. It's not only the transaction costs, but it's also what awaits for them on the other side with regard to the mortgage repayment. So it's a bit of a stalemate, and as I said, for me, it's a bit of a quagmire as to people's making the decisions. But look, if Tom says that there's a lot more investors going to be hitting the field, that's something that a lot of agents have told us as well, and that's a reflection of your surveys. But what type of properties are being put on the market? How are they? What are they? And where are they? Are things that people are going to be considering. And look, with all this, Martin, unfortunately, from our experience, and this is just anecdotal, anecdotally, is most of our clients don't really want to make sacrifices to get something better. I mean, some do, but most don't.
Good point, Edwin. Yeah, no, there's a bit of a hangover from the last few years when, of course, anybody with a pulse could get a mortgage, and a big mortgage, and there's an aspirational aspect to here, which is probably in some cases now over-egged, because of course the typical mortgage now is, let's say, 30% lower than it was a year, 18 months ago. So people can't leverage up so much. They've also got less cash flow to start with, and so it's certainly getting a bit tough. But as I mentioned before, and the WeChat chatters, of course, have a different strategy, right? So they look at a property and then say, how many bedrooms, how many individual rooms can I let out? And suddenly you can turn a small number into a large number.
Well, this is the thing, right? This is something that it was interesting, because this is a conversation we had with the WeChat group over the weekend. And we're talking hypotheticals, right? So this is hypothetically one of those hypothetical realities, right? If I could use that term. So I've sent you the screenshot of a two-bedroom small two-bedroom townhouse, single level, and this is what they're talking about. I mean, this is the what's going out there, and the different appetites. And I mean, and this is why a lot of them are waiting for that second wave as well. They believe there's going to be a second wave of purchasing, and they're getting themselves ready. Now, obviously, these are in areas where there's going to be transport facilities to the tertiary education centres, as well as private education centres, because these are accommodating the students and also potentially accommodating the ghost migrants, or as we call them, the little brothers and little sisters, because it's a cash economy. These are properties that will never be, in the current state, will never be managed by a licensed agency or a property manager. These are self-managed properties, and this is what we're seeing a lot of properties transition into. So the first slide that I've sent you, the first floor plan, is your floor plan, and this is the discussion on the weekend, right? So you've got a 2-bedroom dwelling, spacious living area, and a kitchen. So if you put up the second slide, this is what they're talking as to doing, right? So they're converting a 2-bedroom dwelling into a 4-bedroom dwelling, Martin. And this is the dwelling currently getting $450 to $460, I think, dollars a week in rent. But this is what they're talking about potentially doing to this dwelling. So converting it from 2 into a 4. Cleaning it up a little bit, tidying it up a little bit, not much more. Getting rid of the kitchen altogether, putting in a galley-style kitchenette, not hardwired stove or a gas cooktop or anything of the like, just a microwave, one of those convectional microwave ovens, maybe an electric hot plate, a small bar fridge. But typically, a lot of these people will have a small bar fridge in their own bedrooms anyway. And so you go from $450 a week to potential income of $1,400 a week. So this is what the WeChat chatterers are doing. These are what the groups that we talk to, that Dusty and I talk to, and we get together. And this is why I say to people, don't go toe to toe with the WeChat chatterers or the little aunties on the battleground, because how they carve up the properties as what you want to do with it. If you're looking at from an investment point of view, for you it doesn't make sense. For the average Joe, the average Aussie, it doesn't make sense, because you're buying something at $900,000 and you're getting a rental return of $450. It just doesn't make sense, right? But if you're buying something for $900,000 and you're getting $1,400 a week rent in cash, well, hey, it's a different game. It's a different mindset. It's a different strategy. But this is happening all over Sydney, and I dare say it's probably happening a lot in parts of Melbourne and also in Brisbane.
Yeah, and so there's the pure maths, which is that you can significantly lift the income generation capacity of the property, and that means that you can afford to pay more to actually acquire it. Right, that's the first point. So as you're saying, you're not competing on a level playing field with a typical family who might be buying it for their own use. The other question, Edwin, is can they do this without getting permission? So, can you just put up a couple of walls and shift things around? Or should you actually get approval and permission from the local council to do this? And I guess that's another little question. I wonder how often this is just not ever sought. And therefore it might be legal, it might be illegal. I mean, I don't know what the status is really of these sorts of alterations.
Well, you've got a number of hurdles that you're climbing over in terms of a strata complex, right? You got your owners corporation, you got your sticky beaks, your neighbours that want to know what you're doing and why so many people are coming in and out of a property. So you've got. You could say that's your first hurdle that you've got to overcome. Secondly, you've got obviously the strata, the allotment, and to do with a bigger. You can't do this sort of a body that's going to prevent you from doing this. And then then you've got your council regulations with regards to rentals. Individual rentals in a property. You can room let, but how you carve the property up is another area, another field that you're going to have to navigate through. But look, a lot of this is happening without the owners corporations knowing, without the strata knowing, and without the council knowing, because they're very selective of the properties that they choose. They won't choose properties where you've got the majority owner occupiers. They will choose properties where they're smaller parcels or smaller strata complexes, and where the majority are tenants anyway, so they're not going to complain. A lot of this happens in areas also in terms of houses outside of strata properties. You see that in a lot of areas where the majority of your neighbours are tenants as well. So you don't really get a lot of complaints from tenants. And then you've also got these areas where you've got clusters of specific communities. Like say you've got your Cabramatas, you've got your Albans, your Lidcombs, your the different areas where it's attracted a different a particular ethnicity, ethnic type of group, and where they'll turn a blind eye. And why? Because it's a thing you do, and really they feel that they're accommodating fellow brothers and sisters, and getting something in return, be it a financial strategy, or be it a benevolent strategy, which is not really benevolent, but more so a financial strategy. But it's all underground, undercover, and it's all hush hush, because as I said, it's specific communities that will form clusters, and they don't tend to tell on each other. You get less sticky beaks, because pretty much, if even if it's some of these areas, even if they're owner occupied, you've got your garages that have been converted into makeshift granny flats. Then you've got issues of, obviously, you've got safety, you've got health. You've got all these other issues that the council will look at very strongly, and will pretty much put in get you to give you a demolition order to bring it back to what it was meant to be, unless a DA is applied for. So there are means and ways to get around this, the different hurdles that you have to jump, and also there's no record. There's no record, because most of it is at the moment are desperate students and people that are ghost migrants that will pay in cash, and won't say anything, because they either work in long hours anyway. They just need somewhere safe, that they feel safe and secure, and can have that a bed to sleep on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's worth reflecting also, of course, the question of fire alarms, whether fire alarms will be in every room, etc. There's a whole bunch of risks there. And of course, it means that if you've got this sort of activity in that particular property, what does it do to the value of other properties in the block? And do you find that more people go the same way, and suddenly is the whole block then basically converted into high density, ultra high density housing, right? And what does that do? And it's worth just saying, isn't it? You made the point, this is all underground, and so these WeChat groups that we're talking about are becoming a very influential factor in the way that property is actually being transacted. As we said the other day, there are properties that are listed not on the formal portals but in these groups, and there are people talking about these things. I mean, this is a whole underbelly of the property sector that many people just aren't aware of, and yet it's having a very significant influence in some areas.
Look, it is, and and you'd be surprised the areas as well. I mean, like a few years back, if you recall, in 2021, I was sharing homes over at Epping, Carlingford, in I think one at St Ives, that had 2 and 3 kitchens. One had and there was one in Gordon that I also posted up. And I shared on our show back then, and how these, even before these were before the current situation that we're facing now. These were to accommodate again the students, the ghost migrants because this phenomenon of room letting or makeshift boarding houses to accommodate students and other migrants isn't new. We're just seeing a lot more of it, and the mainstream media picking up more on what we were talking about back in 2019, even as far back as 2017, I've been talking about all this, and ever since really the gates were flung open to bring in every Tom, Dick, and Harry to come and study in university, when the universities put the pressure on the government to really open the doors for international students, because it was a gravy a train that they didn't want to stop, because they pay a lot of money. They pay a lot of money to study here in Australia, and this is something that, if you recall, over the course of 21 and 20 and 22, the mainstream media were banging on about how the chancellors and all these faculties from the university, they were being let go. The professors were being let go because they didn't have the incomes, and the poor bunnies that were no longer getting the $1 million retainer packages as chancellors, that were being let go for one reason or another, because the incomes weren't in. So obviously, with this pressure, this new pressure that's being put on the government for immigration, well, it fuels that once again. Except now we're feeling, because we've really ramped it up. We've turbocharged, the current government's turbocharged what the previous government was doing. But you and I said it was always going to happen, no matter who was going to come into power. What one could say that the previous government may not have been as extravagant as what the current government's is in relation to immigration, but it was going to happen anyway. So we are where we are because we say that the fix was in, and it was in 2019. Is when we saw what the government changes to the immigration policies were back then. So regardless of who came into power, the fix was already in.
Spot on. Yeah, well, we said it doesn't matter which side of politics, they're both dancing the same tune, right? And just picking up on the students aspect, of course, there was an article that came out saying hotbedding growth is seeing in popular suburbs among international students in a desperate move to beat rising rent. So this is yet another strategy that students are actually employing to try and find somewhere affordable to live. And of course, migration is very much driven by students at the moment, isn't it?
Well, look, it is, but there's the other side of that is also like I said, there are other areas. It's not just the students. They come in as students, but obviously then they end up being ghost migrants and everything else. But yeah, look, the hotbedding is at another level. I mean, we're literally talking about taking shifts to sleep in the same bed, and this is because obviously when you come in as a student, now you're legally able to work X amount of hours, more so than before. So what they're doing, most of them, I'll tell you another thing that's happening is in a lot of these private colleges that they come in the guise of students, but there are private colleges that won't even what we would call that don't even care if you turn up to class, to whatever you're meant to be studying. Most of the time it's the first year is you're meant to be studying English and then going on to the next course. They just take the money and they just mark the roll as though you were present. They don't really, I mean, this is what needs to be investigated further, but this is the unfortunate thing that one needs to ask. Is the government aware of what's happening, and are they turning a blind eye because they need the cheap labour force to come back in order to pull the costs of certain sectors down because they've just gone beyond the reach, more to the point in the area of the construction? These are the questions that one asks, and if we see it, why can't the authorities that have got more resources They allegedly have more know-how, better understanding. Why can't they see what we see? And this is where the bigger question is have they got blindfolds on? Are they that thick that they can't really see, or is it just let's pretend it's not there and let it keep on happening? Because we need these people. No matter how they come in, we need them in order to bring the costs down of as I said, of the construction sector.
Well, there's a bit of extend and pretend, obviously, but the truth is that these people who are students are actually really workers who happen to be attached to education as a way of getting in. And of course, if you are actually in a hot bedding situation, so you have a window where you can actually go and sleep, that gets more complicated if they change the work programs, and I believe that there's some changes coming in from 1 July which will make it more difficult potentially for people to work as long as previous. So I think this is going to be another case when once again the government will look the other way and don't want to get involved, but below the surface there are lots of people who are really up against it and are doing whatever they can to try and get by. But it's not actually good policy, and it really does raise a whole bunch of questions in my mind about the way things are set up in Australia at the moment. And it does seem to me to be that this is really pretty exploitative of these people coming into the country. And it's also worth underscoring, I think, that many businesses will say, well, we can't get people to do the work we need them to do. But the truth is they don't want to pay what perhaps other people would command, so they're finding cheap ways to get work done, and in the process, hot bedding is part of the byproduct.
Yeah, and the unfortunate thing is, as I said, Martin, we're not going to really see changes in the cost of, let's stay to the point of the podcast. Is we're not going to see changes in the, in the cost of what builders or what master tradespeople are charging, albeit that they may be getting their labour cheaper. They're still going to be charging, let's say the $100, charging the people out at $100 an hour per se. I'm just using round figures, and albeit that they may be getting them at $30 an hour. Why? Because it's hard to go back. It's hard to go back when the industry has been used to a certain amount of money flowing into the coffers to go back. Hence the reason why I'm very sceptical about anything changing in the rental arena. By way of or even in persuading home prices to go down if there's more construction happening, whether it be at a local LGA level or even a subdivision further out north, south, and west of the CBD. It's not because the cost, the feasibility is still not working out. So you got to have big cojones to really take on a development. Is what the developers that we know that they've been developing for decades what they're saying, because they themselves don't feel assured. So those costs aren't being passed on, and as I said in previous podcasts, I don't see them being. I don't see the consumer benefiting from that. Not this year anyway. Perhaps into 2024. But at the moment, as I said, more we ourselves, for the different people that we're trying to help, we're finding it very difficult to find trades, because at the moment it's the government, the state government projects that are absorbing a lot of these these people into to get those works underway and completed. So from a residential side of the coin, there's still a lot more pain that we have to go through before we can really see any changes there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm talking about pain. Here's another case study, which is worth looking at. So there's a property in Drummoyne, sold on the 4th of June for $4.1 million, right? Now it's on the market with a guide of $2.5 million. What on earth is going on?
This is exactly right. This is, again, I wonder whether the mainstream media are going to pick up on what you and I have been discussing for how long now, and the importance of really doing your due diligence, right? So, in my initial post this morning, I asked, is this sorcery, or is somebody really prepared to take a haircut? So today I called the agent. In the afternoon I called the agent and I got a little bit more background information on it. Because it's a big drop in asking price, so effectively it's pretty much a decapitation of the bank account in my view. It's not just a haircut, but the previous seller of the property was a builder, or is a builder, I should say. It is a builder, and this is all according to the agent. Now, our followers, they look at the address, they can call the agent, and the agent will confirm this, because they've been very open about the whole background of this situation. So this is now a post. Sorry, this is a post sent by Strategic Plan 4. DM'd me this morning, and I did a bit of following up on it. So I called the agent. I had time to sit down and call the agent, and so the previous builder, the one that sold for the property for $4.1 million in 2021, had that taken care of all the extensions, the renovations, the whole bit, and basically the slab was too low, and with the subsequent rains, after the sale, after he renovated it and sold it, the property keeps on flooding to the point where now the current sellers are putting it on the market, but they're pretty much putting it on the market at land value, because they've been quoted, according to the agent, they've been quoted $1 to $1.5 million to rectify the situation. So I guess they don't have the $1.5 million to rectify it. I don't know. They don't have any recourse in following the previous owner, albeit he's a builder. But there's, I don't know the whole legals. They must have tried, because you don't just walk away from 1.5 million, right? You don't just sort of without getting legal advice. So something's going totally amiss. But this is what you and I have been talking about. And although I've been saying, if you don't do your due diligence, and if you don't, and if you're going to believe everything the agent tells you, now let me premise this: is I'm not alleging that the current agent, who was also the previous agent, Bresic Whitney, I'm not alleging that they've misinformed the buyer. I'm not alleging anything. I'm just saying that this is where you really got to be careful as to who you believe and whether or not you are going to trust, as you say, the survey or the building the building report provided by the agent, and if it was done correctly. Again, I'm not alleging that there's anything untoward happened here, but sometimes you got to ask. You got to say, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, there's something going on, right? So so that's a story. But I mean, we talk about rectification work on a 1.5 or a $2 million property of 150,000. But when you're talking 1.5 million of rectification works, that's a hell of a lot of money, right? Or 1.6 million, based on the guide. I believe they'll get hell of a lot more than the 2.5. I think that's a little bit low, and I think that the price that the current owners have got to do the rectification work, it's probably a little bit inflated. If the story that the agent is saying is true, but it's there's a lot of pain there. One thing for sure is that there is a lot of pain, and let's take it at face value. And this is what happens if you really don't do your due diligence. I mean, you and I talk about 150, 200,000, worst case scenario, but we're talking 1.5 million.
Well, the old caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. That's a good example here. And I guess I couldn't help chuckling when you mentioned the duck swing, quacks like a duck is a duck. Well, of course, it floods, so why would you expect? There were plenty of ducks around there, but no, it is a very interesting case study, and it does make the point again. We can't emphasize this enough. You must do your own due diligence. If you're thinking of buying a property, do your own due diligence. Take nothing at face value. Take nothing from the agent as being gospel, and do your own work, do your own validation, and make quite sure that you actually really know what is going on, because it's much, much easier to, just take it on face value from what somebody else has said and get into it and then discover you've got problems, compared with doing the work up front, but then protecting yourself against the situation where you end up with bills you didn't expect and a property that isn't what you thought it was. And unfortunately, in my surveys and in my conversations or through the one-on-ones that I run, I still hear a lot of people who end up with major disappointment. So they thought they were buying something and they end up buying a lemon. And quite often the lemon doesn't really appear immediately. You have to sort of get to know the property and see all the things that need to be done. And then when you start asking the harder questions about why this, why that, that's when the penny drops. By which time, of course, the previous vendor's gone off down the road and spent the money, and all you've got left is a major headache. And as you say, this one's an example of a bit of a decapitation, not just a haircut.
And that's a problem. That's a problem. That's why we say there it is. It's right there, and I think based on our history, Martin, I do believe that the mainstream media will pick this one up, and there'll be an article in the next week or so about it. But look, it's a question that needs to be raised as to what I say is the dangerous liaisons between the selling agents and the building, inspectors, the industry. I mean, that's just look. They're not. I don't think that the changes that the previous government tried to bring in with in relation to underquoting, because this is a byproduct of all those changes to the underquoting regs or trying to curb underquoting, which hasn't worked, and it won't work. Unless really we go back to really scrutinising how the remuneration process is going to be dealt with moving forward. But anyway, here we are. This is it, and it's really in your face. Let's hope the mainstream media pick it up like they do with a lot of other conversations.
That's right. Well, you hear it here first, and then you hear it in the mainstream media a few weeks later. So watch this space. Now, let's just briefly talk about numbers. And in fact, in Sydney, the listings were up very slightly this week, 14,635, compared with 14,470 last time. But really, that's hardly a move at all, really.
Yeah, nothing's moving. I'm paying close attention to. If anything, the specific areas, although this is a sort of an overall view of the Sydney region, but there are specific areas where listings have gone down to a handful of listings, and I know that in that particular area there's 7 offices with an average of 4 selling agents. So what I see, the thing that really really stands out for me is how true the what we've been saying is coming to pass, and how true the words that Tom shared over the weekend is really is really happening, and that is the big exodus. But it's, as I said, it's not a surprise. and we will see. We're going to see a lot more if these numbers continue to remain low, and the industry is going to have a big revolution in itself. I feel, and this gives me more of a reason to say that and believe that the main portals, Domain and REA, are ever so ready and poised to take on the role of being a head office of a real estate office, and basically the majority of the agents that stay in the industry will be working on a fee for service to them, with them.
Yeah, we've been talking about this, of course, for some little time, and the evolution is clear there at some point. Now, in Melbourne, pretty much the same sort of story. So this week, 21,833 compared with 21,641 last week. So almost no real variation in terms of the movement there. And it's also worth looking at the auctions. Again, pretty low numbers. Nothing really to write home about that I can see there either, Edwin.
No. And this is the reluctance for people to sell. It's a lot lower than 2022. It's a lot lower than 2022 by for sure. But again, it's really just a reflection of where people are just basically hibernating. It's a wait and see. It's a standoff. People are making those decisions, and look, no doubt we're going to hear a lot more stories about banks being willing to do deals with their clients in order to stretch the loan tenures in order to maintain people in the albeit that they're under rental stress, as we spoke last week. They may be foregoing a lot of pleasures of life and a lot of necessities of life, but it's hard to think because again, there's no choice in the rental accommodation to say, right, I'll get up and go and leave, and because there are a lot of moving parts, there are a lot of decisions that have to be made, from schooling, from sport, from work, from commuting, from distance, from relocation, cost of sale, this, that, and the other. But look, there's certainly a lot of there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of noise, psychological pain, emotional noise, pain. People are obviously feeling very desperate. So these numbers to me just show is a reflection of that standoff. And people are waiting and see. Obviously, tomorrow's decision is going to make people decide whether they remain or sell as well. Depending on where the rates go. If they, I don't know what your call is, but if rates don't move up, if they stay where they are, I think the pain in terms of low numbers, it will potentially proceed all the way up to mid-spring.
Yeah, and it's worth, I think, saying that, of course, the impact of those earlier increases are still flowing through. So it takes 2 to 3 months for the variable rates to really hit bank accounts. And the mortgage cliff, of course, is now right at the maximum. So July, August is where a lot of those mortgages are now being reset. So that's going to be enough to put a further dampener on things. And, I still believe that we'll probably start to see higher listings later in the year with the spring season and with people being forced to consider. There was a report that came out quite recently showing that more people were selling at a loss because they were being forced to sell. So I think, there's a lot to play for. Just on the Sydney rentals, again, 12,152. That's not a significant move. So again, not much to see there in terms of wild gyrations. And I guess we just get to keep a watching brief over the next few weeks, go through the winter, move into spring, and see whether things start to shake out. With regard to the RBA, they definitely will put rates higher, whether it's this month or whether they leave it a month and then do it next month. All the forward indicators from the 30-day ASX is that rates will go a lot higher, and they'll still be higher than they are today in a year to 18 months' time. So longer and higher are the messages, and pretty much all central bankers around the world are saying the same at the moment. So we're not just an Australian situation here. Pretty much all of the Western central banks are now pulling the same sort of levers to try and get inflation under control. And of course, inflation is still well above target. And whilst you can see some variation in some categories, the core inflation rates are still very sticky, and we're seeing it flowing into some wages and things as well. So I think the inflation battle is far from over, and that's going to have a significant impact on the overall property market. But as we come to the end of the conversation, Edwin, your tip for the week's a really, really important one.
Well, yeah, with all the pressures that are around us, whether you've got a side hustle or two in order to make ends meet and to keep afloat, with all the business pressures, work. One of the things that we tend to overlook is our health. We spoke about it before, and I think now that we're moving into the new financial year, I think this is something that we need to relook at as well, because healthy body, healthy mind, able to confront all the unfortunately, and it's saddened me to say this, but there's a lot more pain ahead. But in order to withstand that pain, we just got to be in the right health, to be in the right spirits. Look after your health. Don't overlook it. I mean, there's you just need to make time for yourself to look after. Health is more important than bricks and mortar, because you can regain, you can rebuild, but health is one of those areas that it's hard to repossess once you lose it.
Yeah, good advice, Edwin. And in fact, I was talking in my one-on-ones this last week with two different people, both of whom had actually over the last 2 or 3 years given up on regular dental checks simply because the costs were going through the roof. And unfortunately, in both cases, they've ended up with these very much larger dental bills than they might have got, simply because they didn't actually keep their dental health care record up to date and trap things early. And I must tell you that the cost of dental is ridiculously expensive, right? I mean, if you think the cost of renovating a bathroom is crazy, I can tell you getting some dental work done is even more crazy. So I think it's really important to think about these. And I do see in my surveys a lot of people who are actually saving money on healthcare, dental and allied situations. And I guess the question is that false economy? Because effectively, you might miss something which later will be much more serious. And as you say, it might be to the point where you can't reverse it, or you can, but it's going to cost an arm and a leg, as it were. So, I mean, these are really important times to make sure that you've got a centre of focus on health and well-being. And I think, the family values around that are really important, rather than just out to make the maximum buck from the next property you might want to buy.
Look, most definitely. And that's just something that, we hope and we encourage our followers to remain vigilant and look at all areas of life, or their life holistically, as opposed to just focusing on the one thing. Longevity of life, I think that's worth a lot more than whether or not you sleep in a sub-penthouse or a 2-bedroom apartment or the penthouse, right? So you got to live long to enjoy it.
Spot on. That's a very important message, and live long and prosper, as the Vulcans say, and that's a very, very good point. Edwin, thanks very much once again. Always enjoyed chatting with you from Monday Rants, and we'll do it again next week. Always plenty to talk about, and have a good week meantime, and don't get too cold in these rather cold times that you've got over there at the moment. I hope you get some more warmth coming soon.
Yeah, look, and so Dusty and Evan hopes as well that I'm invading their space. They want me back in my dungeon. So they want to kick me out. I've got the lights on. I've got too much happening here. It's time for their nap. So I've got to go.
Thanks, Edwin. See you later. Take care. Bye bye.